Welcome to this session. I'm Paul Goodman, editor of ConservativeHome, and first of all, it's my pleasure to introduce John Boomfree, who has the splendid title of being the country manager of Amazon, which means for the UK. John, I assume you're not responsible for the splendid emails I get each morning from Amazon Prime advertising your magnificent service, which I'm knee-deep in the middle of at the moment, but welcome. It's very good of you to sponsor this conference with us. Without you, it wouldn't be happening, so it's over to you to speak now.
Thank you, Paul, and thank you for bringing us together today. ConHome provides an incredibly important voice in our policy, though I must say I'm delighted that my leadership team at Amazon are not subjected to your Cabinet League table exercise. Skills is a matter of significant personal interest to me. Having spent 2 years as a teacher early in my career, as a parent to 3 boys, and since 2020 as the country manager for Amazon here in the UK, I'm acutely aware of the importance of skills in the modern workforce. That's why I'm delighted to support the Education Secretary on his Business Engagement Forum, and why I'm pleased to be here with you today. At Amazon, you're never far away from the future of jobs. One of the most futuristic things you can do is to work alongside our robots at Amazon. And they're a great example of the changes that we've seen and perhaps a glimpse into the future that we can expect. We invested in robotics about 10 years ago, and this has really transformed warehouse jobs at Amazon. When we introduce robotics into our operation sites, we improve safety, we improve productivity, and notably, we hire more people. Globally, we've added 500,000 robots in the last decade into our operations division, and over the same time period, we've created another 1 million jobs. And that includes thousands of people maintaining and operating these advanced machines. Further, one of the statistics I'm most proud of in the UK is that more than 50% of colleagues who joined our UK operations teams last year did so either directly from unemployment or from education. Next year will be our 25th anniversary of operating in the UK. And when I think about that journey, from our humble beginnings in our first office in Slough in 1998 to employing more than 70,000 people today, I can start to empathise with those whose job it is to predict and prepare for our future skills requirements. But at Amazon, we do not subscribe to the belief that it is our role as business ends there. It's also the responsibility of business to deliver many of those skills to our employees. Why? Because simply put, this makes good business sense. Investment in people leads to higher productivity and increased loyalty, which drives economic growth. We know that our people want this. In a survey of our operations employees who joined the business last year, 91%, the highest number, told us that career development was the most important factor in their decision to join the company. We deliver this development for our employees in lots of different ways, but let me just talk about 2. We operate one of the UK's largest and most diverse apprenticeship schemes, and this year we created over 1,500 apprenticeship roles across 40 different programs. We also offer Career Choice, which is a program whereby we pay 95% of tuition and associated fees for nationally recognised courses for our employees. To give you a sense of the demand out there for skills training, last year we helped over 1,000 Amazon employees retrain to become HGV drivers. Now, as a significant employer in the UK, we believe we also have a responsibility to look beyond our direct business and support skills programs. We've heard in several of the earlier discussions today about the importance of SMEs. And to the question earlier, we believe that supporting small and medium-sized businesses is critical. In the height of the pandemic in June 2020, we launched a program called Amazon Small Business Accelerator, whereby we give free online training, access to mentors, and a series of boot camps to any business, whether they sell on Amazon or not. And we're proud that we've now got more than 500,000 small businesses who are gaining digital skills through this. Earlier, Justine also mentioned our partnership with Barnardo's, where we're supporting care leavers enter the world of work. Another example is our partnership with Teach First and our Amazon Future Engineer program, which helps kids from underserved communities get excited about robotics. And just today, I'm pleased to announce that we're launching a new program called Amazon Study, which is now live on amazon.co.uk, which will provide parents, carers, and teachers with access to a wide range of free curriculum-linked maths and science resources to support children's learning. Taken as a whole, we are looking to support future generations with the necessary tools and training they need to succeed. Now, this morning, we've already heard from several people who are key to the discussion. I know that skills drives an awful lot of Jimmy's activity on his podcast, and like many others, I very much enjoyed his interview with the Education Secretary. At Amazon, we're also delighted to be partnering with former Secretary of State Justine and her team on the This Is Purpose Coalition, and it was also great just to hear from one of our key local site MPs and a real champion for apprenticeships in Jack Lepresti. We'll now hear from the Education Secretary. For my part, I want to thank him for his leadership in this space, whether through the Skills and Post-16 Education Act, the Levelling Up Agenda, or the more recent digital strategy. I know this government takes skills, future skills, incredibly seriously, and I'm very grateful to him for all his work in driving forward this important subject across Whitehall. Thank you.
Nadhim, I've been asked to introduce you briefly, but this puts me in some ways in a strange position because it's not often I have the chance to introduce someone whose association with Conservative Home goes back even longer than mine. In that you obviously worked very closely with Stefan Shakespeare at YouGov, and Stefan was one of the original inspirations behind Conservative Home, and it's been a pleasure watching you ever since, working your way through government, really delivering one of the successes of this Parliament in terms of the vaccine programme. And I think you're an interesting guy because you brought to what you did there and to your present role your experience in business. And business people in the Conservative Party at the top, they're a bit less common than they were. But as you've reminded us all recently, you came here as a kid, as an outsider, not knowing a word of English. So these are two very interesting elements to your life, and we're looking forward to hearing what you have to say. Nadhim, welcome.
Thank you very much, Paul, and good morning, everyone. I'm truly delighted to be able to attend, I think, what is the first of these new half-day events by Conservative Home. I have deep affection, as you just heard, for Con Home. I've spoken at your events in the past. I think I've been a contributor to the site. And of course, my great friend, as you just heard, and partner, Stefan Shakespeare, used to be the proprietor of Con Home. And more recently, your reporting on my fantastic schools bill has been a timely reminder that you will report without fear or favour, which is exactly as it should be, Paul. I am honoured to speak at this event, and I look forward to many more events like this one. It's also a real privilege to be here today in the RSA. I'm sure all of you here in the building will have seen that the full title of the RSA is the Royal Society of Arts, Manufactures and Commerce. I love this full title because commerce and manufacture, and indeed all true capitalism, is inherently an art as much as it is a science. Capitalism is human, it is creative, it is innovative, and it is moral. For most of human history, extractive zero-sum relations between the powerful and the downtrodden were the norm, even in some places into, sadly, the modern world. Karl Marx was a member of the RSA, and we all know the destruction that the communist world view brings to economies such as it does to everything else. And as some of you may know, I was born in Baghdad and lived the first decade of my life under a genocidal dictator. Believe me, you don't want the government having as much control over society and the economy in a way that Saddam did or that Marxists still yearn to do today. But here in our great country, in the United Kingdom, not least thanks to the thinking of another RSA fellow, Adam Smith, the modern economy was born. A consenting exchange of goods and services in a manner that brings benefit to both parties has changed the world in the last few hundred years in a way that I think few other revolutions have come even close. And we are all the beneficiaries of this. We are so used to the miracles of markets, invention, scale, trust between strangers, to name a few, that we are repeatedly at risk of squandering this inheritance. Turning on the wealth creators, the risk takers, is an easy and, of course, tempting thing for politicians to do. Just ask our friends in the Labour Party. It is also completely wrong. Without commerce, without businesses, big and small, we shall fall, my friends. There would be no money for our schools, our hospitals, no dazzling innovations that push science and technology forward, including no vaccines, and no hope for a better tomorrow. And as a great woman once said, there is no such thing as government money. There is only taxpayers' money, and I hope that all of us appreciate the many ways in which businesses, big and small, contribute to our society. So whilst I'm here to talk about skills for the modern economy, I can't do that without setting out my thanks for the worlds of commerce and manufactures. I know what it's like to start and build a business. When I co-founded YouGov, I learned that when you start a company, you must quickly turn your hand to many different things, finance, HR, marketing, sales, you name it, you have to do it. And I learned a lesson that has helped me throughout my career. The hardest thing to do in any organization, public sector or private, is to scale it. The quicker I could hire someone with the right skills and empower them, the sooner I could pass that responsibility onto them and, of course, focus on the next challenge that comes up in a business. Scale is hard, my friends, and the only way to sustainably scale is by having the right people with the right skill sets in your organization. And in the real world, that means having people out there who have the ability to be productive and fulfilled in their work. There is a golden thread that runs through all of this government's efforts to ensure that people have the skills they need to be successful and to be able to make a contribution. And that thread is a basic one. It's based on what I've been talking about so far. It is the understanding that you cannot develop a modern skills agenda without holding businesses close to you and taking your lead from business. In 2022, where sectors of our economy are born and are crushed in double time, there's no way we in the center of government, in the ivory tower that is sanctuary buildings or elsewhere, should even try to dictate the skills of the future. David Cameron sent me to the Department for Education as the apprenticeship czar. We had lots of czars in those days, Paul, although there's one modern day czar I know we all desperately want to see the back of, but that's for a whole other debate. When David Cameron sent me to the department for the first time, I knew we had to involve business. One of the most exciting results, building on the excellent work of actually a Labour peer, Lord Sainsbury, is the T level. You can see the badge here on my lapel, and no, it doesn't stand for Tory leader, but it stands for T levels. T levels, my friends. A T level is an exciting new option for most young people, and I hope older, post-16 students and our first T-levelers will be graduating this summer. T-levels are the future, my friends, because they are the equivalent of 3 A-levels. They've been designed alongside industry, that golden thread I mentioned, and require a 45-day in-work placement. That's really important. You can take a T-level in areas such as construction or health and science, and this year we will see the launch of T-levels in engineering and manufacturing, and soon you can take a T-level in agriculture and more. I'm building what I describe as different runways for people's careers to take off from, because once you have completed a T-level, you can go to traditional university, you can start an apprenticeship or a degree apprenticeship, or you can join the world of work, clear-eyed about what work looks like, because you've had your 45 days, and ready to take on the world. I know with certainty what skills that world will need in the future is impossible. We can't know that. Tomorrow, some genius coming out of Imperial College London or a shed in their back garden might invent a new widget that changes everything. But government still makes investment assumptions, and it holds huge amounts of data to try to cater to these needs. Instead of hoarding this data, I have started the Unit for Future Skills that will pull data across Whitehall from DWP, HMRC, and beyond, and will publish all that data in regular cuts about what skills we think the economy will need. This isn't a planned economy. It's the opposite, my friends. We will publish this data, and the market can do what it wants with it. A couple of kids in a garage might slap an interface on that data and make their fortunes, because then their site will be used by people when they decide what career they want to follow. Some of you in the room may look and see a new career emerging. Data and transparency are my great ally. They were my ally in the vaccine deployment and will now be brought to bear on the economy of the future. I know from my time in the private sector and also as a minister in Bays that businesses know they will struggle to compete in the future without a pipeline of highly skilled employees. They are willing to pay well for this talent, and all too often I hear employers' frustrations with a limited pool of graduates, even though we are still today seeing job ads being advertised that state graduate in the essential criteria. So I am urging employers to think differently about their recruitment. Think about whether they really need someone with a degree. The chances are they'll be able to hire someone with other relevant skills, experiences or qualifications that will help them in their business and that they're looking for. And it's not just young people for whom skills will be increasingly relevant. It's something that will be crucial to more mature learners too, to ensure the future success of the British economy in this century and beyond. I'm super excited about the idea of what's known as modular learning. This is smaller rounds of upskilling and reskilling to help you adapt to the changing economy that I described. I met a young man called Usman recently who had taught himself to code. But because he didn't have any formal qualifications, he and his wife found themselves working for today's sponsor, working in an Amazon distribution warehouse in Derby, doing useful work, important work. But then he discovered something called Google Certificates, which credentialized his skills and allowed him to prove to his employers how talented he was at programming, at coding. He was able to show Amazon that he could code Python and Java. He's moved in Amazon into the development team and has a bright future for his family. And we're developing our own support system for this retraining revolution. At the moment, it's called the Lifelong Loan Entitlement. It is a mouthful. I know that, and I am going to come up with a better brand for it. I came up with YouGov, so I'll get something much snappier as a title. The LLE represents the government backing people with £37,000 in today's money over the course of their lives to retrain at any point in their life. It can be taken as a whole in one go of 4 years of post-18 education, or drawn down in modules. And I think it's that modular form that will be the real success. Let me give you an example. If you are listening to this here or on the airwaves, and you work, say, in Aberdeen oil and gas, but you want to move into hydrogen or offshore wind, we will back you to retrain and reskill. Ronald Reagan once said, "Today, if you invent a better mousetrap, the government comes along with a better mouse." But he also said, "There are no great limits to growth because there are no limits of human intelligence, imagination, and wonder." I believe this to the very marrow of my bones. I have tried to live this principle since this great country gave me the opportunity only afforded in the United Kingdom, and I want to be true to everybody else. We talk about levelling up in terms of investment and infrastructure, but if we are to make a success of levelling up, Paul, it must mean levelling up people, investing in them and giving them access to the opportunities and skills that they need. This country is the greatest country in the world. It helped me make my dreams come true, and to go from a small boy hiding in the back of the classroom, unable to speak a word of English, to the Secretary of State for Education in Her Majesty's government and the Member of Parliament for Shakespeare. And I won't rest until everyone, young or old, has the skills and opportunities they need to make their British dream come true as well. Thank you for listening.
Nadhim, thank you very much. We're lucky enough to have you for half an hour, and let me just explain what we're going to do. I'm going to ask you some questions. More to the point, people here, I hope, will come in. And just as much to the point, there are people online who I hope will be asking questions in the same way that they've asked questions in the previous sessions. So thank you very much. You concentrated largely on skills. The conference is, of course, is about jobs within which skills are wrapped. So I want to sort of start with a question about jobs in the UK in this way. You will remember, it's not all that long ago, since there was this terrible phenomenon of mass unemployment. And then Mrs. Thatcher comes in and reforms the labour market. Tony Blair comes, it doesn't really change very much, as the minimum wage, but the basic structure of the economy remains the same. There's a financial crash. Some economists forecast millions of unemployed. Doesn't happen. The economy, at least in jobs terms, booms away. So what I wanted to ask you at the start was, to what extent is it a good thing that political writers and writers about economics say, well, lots of problems, you know, balance of payments, business investment, productivity, but jobs, don't worry, we've got it cracked. To what degree is the success of the British jobs market in the last 20 years something to be proud of? And to what extent are we in danger of getting complacent about the successes as we look forward to the challenges ahead?
Thank you, Paul. I think it's worth remembering that over the past decade or so, the 12 years that we've been in power, and I spoke about it in my earlier remarks, the principle, the golden thread of co-creating a skills landscape, a skills ecosystem with business, because I think in a dynamic economy such as ours, where sectors are crushed and reborn, you can't do it, however clever you think you are in Whitehall. And that's been a great success that I think we can point to. There's more to do. I think the challenge today is two-tiered. One, post-pandemic, where supply chains have had to redevelop and because of the shutdown, have been slow to come back. and of course war on our continent. Not a long time ago, most analysts would say that we see wars in other continents, not in Europe. That has fundamentally changed, and therefore we're facing obviously a spike in energy costs and an inflationary spike as well, and we have to keep a very close eye on that. But I do think there's something else that's fundamentally changed and shifted, which we also need to be cognizant of. So when I was launching YouGov in 2000, the digitization then was very much about companies saying, I need to buy some kit and plug and play it. COVID has changed that. Why has it changed that? Because actually digitization has happened on a much greater scale because companies, large and small, have found themselves under lockdown and had to change fundamentally, rapidly to digitize. The difference is it wasn't just plug and play, it was plug and then work out how you're going to manage your workforce to be able to make the most of the technology. So there's a big shift in how companies organize themselves in a world where every company is digital. We used to sort of talk about companies that are in digital space and then sort of as if there's the rest of the economy. That is no longer true. So that's a big shift. The other big shift that was first highlighted to me by Ian Diamond and the work that he does brilliantly, brilliant ONS work, is we've seen that post-pandemic, over 50-year-olds have decided to either not return to work and take retirement, or do less work, and that sort of work-life balance. And how do we need to respond to that? Is it about more flexible working? Is it about how we incentivize businesses to invest in that retraining, reskilling and upskilling, not just through the review of the levy that we are conducting with Treasury, but also how do you unlock some of that in training investment? Amazon does it very well, but there are many other sectors of the economy that have pulled back on their training budgets. So there are some big challenges ahead in a tight labor market where we need to bring inflation back under control. There is a global battle against inflation. This isn't unique to the United Kingdom. It's happening in Germany, in the US and elsewhere, so that you don't continue to sort of fuel that inflationary spiral. Yet at the same time, you need to make sure that your labor market is operating efficiently. And these are challenges that we haven't faced before. Certainly not in my lifetime. We just have to be cognizant of that. So there are big challenges coming at us. But I think we are, in many ways, in a pretty good position because we've done some of the thinking. I described to you the work that we've done on T-levels and then obviously on LLE, the lifelong loan entitlement. I had the pleasure of having a fireside chat like this with Sal Khan of Khan Academies in the US. This is an incredible human being who decided to tutor his nephew and has built this extraordinary tutoring behemoth in America. But he gave me an amazing example, which is why I go back to this idea of modular learning. And actually our universities are beginning to work this out. Manoush Shafiq at the LSE is talking to me about modular learning. The Royal Academy of Art talking about stackable qualifications. But he gave me the example of a 16-year-old who he does these mastery classes in math. And one of his extraordinary champions is this 16-year-old girl in America who mastered all the statistics programs that Khan Academy offer and is now tutoring hundreds of other people. Now, does that 16-year-old need to go to university, or will she be snapped up and just be a senior statistician at one of the great businesses in the United States, or a smaller business in the US? So there is huge shift happening. But when I showed him the LLE and what we're doing on modular learning, he said, from around the world, this is the first government that he's seen that's taking it seriously. We will pilot short courses next year. I was up in Glasgow with the student loan book company that's building the technology for me for the LLE. It's a big build because I just described it sort of at very high level, 30,000 foot level. But I genuinely feel that we are in a leadership position in a really exciting period in how developed economies do skills. Ultimately, you'll know this because you've heard me say it before, the most valuable resource on earth is not precious metals or hydrocarbons, it's human capital. Right? The nation that can build and deliver the infrastructure that delivers great human beings who are well-rounded, happy, healthy, and highly skilled will win the economic race.
Just directly on that point about human capital, how many people who aren't currently in the workforce should be in it? What sorts of people? So you referred a moment ago to older people who've dropped out of the workforce after COVID. What do you think can or should be done to get them back in? Then you referred in the course of your remarks to people who are at university who maybe don't need to be at university, but could be in the labour market earlier, although of course part of their study may take them into work. And then there's this staggering figure of even though the labour market's very tight, there are, I think, something like 5 million people on out-of-work benefits, right? They're not counted in the employment figures, but they're there. Some of them will be on disability benefits, some on others. Well, what's your vision for getting these various groups and sorts of people into work so they can themselves, I suppose, develop the human capital and the potential that they have?
You're absolutely right, and let me try and bring it to life for you from my own constituency. I spoke about the over 50s phenomenon post-pandemic, which I think we need to think through how we engage with and incentivize people to come back to work whilst maintaining that work-life balance, whether it's flexible working or what that looks like. We're doing a lot of thinking about that at the moment across government. The other one is very much seeing it locally, but equally applies across the country, is your point about disability benefits. And when I talk to my excellent team in my job centre in Stratford, they demonstrated to me that there are, yes, of course, a tight labour market, and this applied equally sort of pre-COVID, as in fact is probably exacerbated by the pandemic, that there is a pool of people in Stratford, several thousand, who aren't getting the opportunities because of their disabilities. And and what I did with them is I used my convening power as the local member of parliament to bring my local businesses together with the local team at the job centre and demonstrate to them through real life examples that if they open up their recruitment to that pool of people, then they could get really high quality people who will be loyal, hardworking to their business. So I think there's a piece of work to do with SMEs and large cap businesses to do more for those people on disability benefits. I think it's been brilliant that Therese Coffey's, when she set the target back in January, I wasn't at all certain that we can meet this target of 500,000 people getting back into the workplace by getting that additional support. She smashed the target, I think last week or the week before, on this. So I think there's a load of stuff that we're already doing, but I also think there's more we can do, especially around the challenge of the over 50s who've just decided that for work-life balance that they don't really want to be back on. And part of it is also, I think, and back to the point that Amazon was making earlier, is that some of those people are probably just need a bit more confidence and hand-holding in a economy where every business is digital. And if once they get that confidence, then they would probably be looking to say, I might do a bit more work than just completely come out of the work market.
Okay, I've got a skills question, but I think it's time for someone else. Just before I call you, I should say, an assistant with a mic is going to come to you, and if you'd like to say who you are and where you're from before you ask your question. So we'll have the lady there.
Hello, I'm Shraddha Kaul, Director of External Affairs at the British Poultry Council. So I represent the trade association that produces over half of the meat eaten in this country. I am, impressed with remarks by the Secretary of State, particularly on skills development career pathways, and I think that's all the sort of things that our industry supports wholeheartedly and is investing on an ongoing basis. There are also reports that everyone's aware of the emerging labour crisis, which is not kind of emerging today, but has been for a long time. But it is coming. We are up against it in terms of food security. What do you think the government is doing in terms of levelling up as far as food industry goes, ensuring that food workers who have put food on every table during the biggest crisis of our lifetime are supported? They're part of the lifetime skills guarantee. And also, how do we beat the stereotype around people working in the food sector? There is one that I'm trying to fight for a very long time, in terms of, if you don't do well in school, you might end up on a chicken farm or a factory. Things have moved on in the last decade in terms of the type of jobs, but also the level of pay, the sort of job.
So sorry, but could I ask you to put your question, if you don't mind?
So how do we beat that stereotype is the second question, and the first one is on the lifetime skills guarantee. Thank you.
Really important question. I've got in my own constituency both Highline, which is a very big business, and one of the big Wheelmore, the food supplies to most of our supermarkets. And it's really a couple of things. The first thing is what actually we heard earlier from Amazon, which is looking at automation. And when I talked to the leadership team at Wheelmore, they are investing in more automation, but actually in higher skilled jobs as well. And so to deal with some of this is businesses beginning to think about business processes. Remember what I said at the start, every business is a digital business. That's a big, wide description. In the case of Wheelmore or Highline, it's looking at that, but also looking at upskilling the workforce as well. And the other one is that, we are now out of the EU. We have direct control over our immigration. That's something that I think is well supported by the country, i.e. the points-based system allows us to calibrate, dial up and dial down the workforce in different industries, including in the food industry, whilst we look at the upskilling and reskilling. Because what you need to do, and coming out of the world of business into politics, I can tell you, these things are not like a switch. There's lag, there is an implementation lag that you need to get through, because by the time you've upskilled, even with things like boot camps, which have been hugely successful, so really short, full-fat courses that helped us with the HGV driver shortages earlier, late last year and earlier this year. It's a combination of both those things. And I think, if I can say this, we need to communicate all this. We need to be very clear as to what is our strategy in terms of the labour market, whilst we're going through this global battle against inflation, and not try and sugarcoat it in any way. I think one of the silver linings of the pandemic, if there was a silver lining to an evil virus like COVID, is the nation got used to seeing Chris Whitty and Patrick Vallance sharing data with them. We need to do more of that. We need to use that setup at number 9 Downing Street and actually share the evidence with the country. And I think they'll come with us on this journey. As I say, we have to be very, very clear. And when you explain to people how tough things are because of war in Europe, because of post-COVID supply chain disruption, then I think people will understand. But you have to then be able to back it up with that clarity of strategy of how you're delivering against it.
You're saying ministers and their advisors should be much more upfront, as they were during COVID, about taking their case directly to viewers and to voters. cutting out, if I may say so, the middleman or the media to put your case directly?
You do both. And you're going to see more of it from this Prime Minister. Boris will be able to set out to the nation, as will, I hope, every cabinet minister do the same thing, the evidence. Because remember what I said earlier, one of the really big lessons of the vaccine program that I delivered is data and transparency is the best way you reform public services. We started, if you remember, publishing data, I think it was every fortnight, then we moved to every Thursday, until we moved to daily data. And actually, we explained to the country that it's imperfect. Remember, we used to adjust the data every 2-3 days. But that level of transparency does deliver better outcomes. And I lived it through the vaccine deployment. You remember there was, when I shared that data, they said, Minister, you're telling us how successful you've been with your vaccination program, but look at the numbers in particular postcodes, Tottenham, amongst the Black and Afro-Caribbean male community, very low vaccine uptake. And I said, that's correct, but at least it allows me to focus on it. Now, the knee-jerk reaction would have been, we've got to put more walk-in centres without appointments because maybe that particular community doesn't like to go online or make a phone call, make an appointment. When I looked at the data, brilliantly built for me by a brilliant technology company called Palantir, and we shared it with the nation, there were more vaccine walk-in centres within 5 minutes walk in those postcodes with the lowest uptake than they were in Stratford-on-Avon with the highest uptake. And I could have easily wasted £500 million of taxpayers' money. But when you look at the data and analyse it, it wasn't the walk-in centres, it was, there were cultural issues where they felt a distrust of, whether it was big pharma, where people felt had behaved badly in parts of the world like Africa in the past, needed more understanding, and there was more hesitancy around vaccine, which is why we decided to deploy ambassadors from the community, preferably clinicians, who would actually go door to door explaining to people that they've been vaccinated and all the work we've done on vaccine efficacy and safety. And so in my very humble view, I hope, that we open up data and transparency in every department. It will lead to a shock horror headline for 5 minutes, but people will eventually get it and see that you are evidence-led.
Did you get kickback from civil servants and other ministers saying, don't do that, Minister, because then it will be found that this group of people are not being treated and you'll be accused of inefficiency or racism or both? Can't possibly do that.
So you have to overcome some of that resistance. I went before the Education Select Committee a few weeks ago, and some of you will know I focused the department. Another lesson from vaccine is focus. You can't hug the world is my mantra in the department, and I'm doing skills, schools, families, and I described skills today, and at another session maybe we can talk about schools and family hubs that we're launching in half of England's local authorities. And I said to my officials that I'm going to go before the Select Committee, and it will be televised, and I'm going to pledge that I will publish and hold my department to account on skills, schools, family, and what our targets are over the next 2 years. Because if I expect the front line to publish attendance data, for example, in schools, to have a national register of children in education, then I should expect the same of my team and myself. There was a slight hesitation in the sense that some in my department asked my special advisors, is he serious about this? If he publishes this stuff, but what if we miss a target? And my advisor said to him, well, that's the whole point. You have to hold yourself to account. And actually, when you do it, people begin to join you on that journey, and they'll understand, because if you miss a target, you have to explain why.
I'm going to get an online question in, which is, well, yes, this is pretty punchy. Is the school curriculum fit for purpose? Asks the questioner. Do children learn the subject skills they need for the modern world, like coding or marketing, to give age 16 school leavers a foundation to succeed without needing to go into further education? Just to sort of gloss that a bit. I do have some of your colleagues, one or two who write for us, but I'm too discreet to name, who argue that the whole curriculum is out of date, and we need a curriculum that's much more focused on those sort of things that I've described. And they're part of what you talk about. And then there's the other view of what the curriculum should be about, because you need a sort of traditional education about the best that can be thought and said, get the basics right, English, maths, and so on. So I can always see the sort of the two Nadhim Zahawis, the technical Nadhim Zahawi, and the Nadhim Zahawi who represents the constituency in which Shakespeare wrote. So which is it, or isn't there really a contradiction at all?
So you need the foundations right? And it's only when I learnt to speak English, read in English, write in English, think in English, dream in English, did I discover that I'm actually quite good at maths and biology and human biology and chemistry and physics, and ended up being an engineer, chemical engineer out of University College London. So the foundations are important. We have a challenge. With all the great reforms that we've delivered over the past 12 years, where we took office, there were only 2/3 of schools that were good or outstanding. It's now 86%. But even today, 1/3 of children who leave primary school do not have the prerequisite ability in English and maths. What does that mean? That means they're going on to secondary education without being able to take advantage of that secondary education, and will probably move up a class whilst not quite doing as well as their talents would allow them to do if they'd had the foundation right. So it's right to focus on that front. And the work, my great friend, mentor, when we were together in the department, Nick Gibb, did was brilliant on phonics screening, all the work on the EBAC, really, really important. But if you look at where we are today, and the evidence is clear, and I hope I demonstrated it in my white paper, is our best performing families of schools, so the high performing, and underline high performing multi-academy trusts, because not all of them are high performing, and I'm taking action to make sure that we get those schools into high performing multi-academy trusts, actually offer that additional extracurricular work, whether it be on skills, teamwork. We overhauled the ICT part of the curriculum before my time, but the department did a great job spending about £80 million with that overhaul. Let me give you an example. I walked into a multi-academy trust in Rutland called Catmose Trust. They've got 3 schools, primary, a secondary and a sixth form free school. And you think you're walking into an art school, the best art I've seen. And I've been around to many, many schools, both as Children and Families Minister and now as Secretary of State. You think you're walking to a sports school. They've got one of the best gymnastics team in their region and competing in championships around the country. You think you're walking into a school that's a music school. They've got one of the best orchestras in the country. It's a STEM school. That's leadership. The same applies to Hammersmith Academy in London, inner city school, but the leadership there understand that actually it's all the other things that you do, and that the head there, Gary Kinniston, said to me, the best thing I can do, he's got almost 60% pupil premium in the school, is stretch every child the moment they walk into the school to the maximum of their abilities, no matter how tough, and some people have pretty tough home lives to contend with. And so I think our great leaders are doing that. Now, when we came into office, there was only one Catherine Bubba Singh who did incredible things with Michaela. There are now thousands of leaders across the system that my task is to support and drive. I've recently announced, and it got a few headlines, but not quite enough because most of the media are obsessed about other issues at the moment. But I announced a music strategy, which was very much trailed in my white paper, where we are buying over 200,000 musical instruments for schools, including ones that are adapted for special educational needs and disabilities. Every school will do, both primary and secondary, 1 hour a week of music curriculum. I want primaries to have a lead in them that does music, secondaries to have a head of department that does music. All these things, you talk to Andrew Lloyd Webber, he'll tell you there's great evidence that if you deliver this other stuff, actually it does drive up standards and attainment as well. So it doesn't have to be a trade-off, in my view, about the two things. what I have to do with Michael Gove is now focus on the areas that we've identified which don't have that opportunity. We held cabinet a few weeks ago in Stoke-on-Trent. The 3 Stoke-on-Trent constituencies have only 1 outstanding school. That can't be right, because I don't believe the children in Stoke-on-Trent are any less talented than the children in Stratford-on-Avon or in South Kensington. They just don't have the opportunity to go to a school with a great teacher, because the great determinant of outcome is the quality of teacher in a great classroom. We're investing in 500,000 teacher training opportunities. I've got to focus the system, my best leaders, my best MAT leaders, into those areas. Can I get, the great leadership at Harris Academy, or Outward Grange, or what Eton Star are doing or planning to do, into those areas, is how I'll make a difference. Do you remember what I spoke about earlier? Scale, right? Scale is a challenge, but if you get it right, I'm about to announce my 10,000th academy in a system of 22,000 schools, 465,000 teachers, 275,000 assistants. You need to evidence what works and then support your best leaders to really scale it up. And that's what I'm determined to do. And if I do my job properly, then every Conservative candidate will put education front and centre of their election address next time round.
Nadhim, I had a question on skills, I had a question on families, which is a very important subject for you, housing, and there were so many others. But on this magical pad in front of me, I had a very stern note saying, please close where you can. So on that note, I have some very brief thanks to make. First of all, to Mark, Angus, Robert and Sarah, the ConHome team who've made this event possible, with John and the team from Amazon. Thank you very much for sponsoring this event. Thank all of you for coming and for your participation. I should say to all of you and those watching online that, of course, videos of the event will be available. So you'll probably want to go back again and look very closely, Secretary of State, at what you said, because your enthusiasm for the subject and your passion for it and your grip really came through, as did your commitment to raising and developing human potential. We all wish you well in that endeavour. Thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you.